Good morning. It is a very bright and beautiful and already very hot June day here in southeastern North Carolina, and I'm sitting out back on our kind of new back patio. So we just put up a brand new Mirador Louvered Pergola, so I wanted to share a little bit about that with you today, but also because we've been doing a lot of work to our backyard, expanding our garden, building a greenhouse, and I'm trying to grow about 50% of our family's vegetables. I thought I'd give you just a little tour of the backyard too. Now, one of the things I want to emphasize is that we live in the suburbs. I know I often talk about like a suburban homestead-ish lifestyle. We live in the suburbs. You can see my neighbors' houses are right there. We live on 1/8 of an acre, and that includes the footprint of our house. So we don't have a ton of space. We have a pretty typical life. So this is a relatively down-to-earth tour of our yard. So if you're looking for a multi-million-dollar homestead, farm, backyard, this isn't your channel. But if you are looking for a relatively normal backyard with some ideas that are easy to implement, this is the spot for you. This is our new Mirador Louvered Pergola. When we first moved into this house, we only had this one 10 by 10 square of concrete, and then we added more onto it 2 times. I'll talk more about that in a minute. But the issue is we have a south-facing backyard, and to be out here in the summer in the sun is almost impossible because there's no shade. We don't even have any mature trees because it's the type of neighborhood there just took down all the trees. So we needed to add some shade. We looked at maybe getting a roof built, but the cheapest quote we could get for a 10 by 20 roof was $20,000. So we skipped on that and we opted for the Mirador Louvered Pergola instead, which ended up being a really great option. So in full disclosure, I did not put this together. My husband did. So I cannot tell you if it was really challenging or super easy, but just based upon my observations, it wasn't really that bad of a build. He was able to put the whole thing together in a single day by himself. The only thing I helped with was holding up the one side of the frame and moving it toward the side of the house. But other than that, he was able to build it on his own. I think he started around 11 in the morning, and by that evening, we were sitting underneath of our pergola, which is kind of a breath of fresh air because really a lot of our projects in the backyard over the last few months have been really long projects, especially just for our lifestyle and our schedules, because we really only have weekends to work on these things. So the nice thing about the Mirador Louvered Pergola is that you can have it up and ready in one day as long as you know how to put things together. This is a fully aluminum frame, and what's really cool about it is you can choose between having it closed and watertight so you have full shade and no water coming in if it's raining, or you can open the louvers to let sun and airflow in. And then also what I really like is not only when you close the louvers is it watertight, but it also has drain channels along the edges that filter into the legs so the water can run down the legs and then out. So you don't have to worry about water pooling on the top of it. We didn't have any issue with angling it. If you have a truly level surface, you might need to angle it just a little bit to help that water run forward or whichever direction you need it to move. But that wasn't an issue for us because, believe it or not, the builders didn't build things level. So it worked out in our benefit and our favor anyway. Now, one thing to keep in mind about the Louvered Pergola is that, of course, it is manufactured and it comes in these specific sizes. So a 10 by 10, or in our case, a 10 by 20. And our patio was exactly 10 feet wide, but to anchor it, it would have been too close to the edge of the patio. So what's really annoying is we were about 2 inches short in concrete. So we had to pay to get more concrete poured. For the second time, we extended our patio once when we moved in, and then we had to extend it a second time to be able to anchor the pergola to the concrete. So that's something to keep in mind when you are shopping for a pre-manufactured pergola like this. Is it not just big enough in terms of length and width, but do you also have enough room to anchor it? Also for us, because we live in a hurricane zone, the 10 by 20 was a better option because it can withstand higher winds. So we have a hurricane here just about every year. Sometimes we have devastating hurricanes. So for us here in southeastern North Carolina, right on the coast, we're just a few miles from the beach, it's really important for us to have things outside that can withstand high winds. And this one did fit the bill. I think I'll double check this and leave it in the description box below, but I think this one can withstand about 100 miles an hour, which honestly at sustained 100-mile-an-hour winds, that's about as much as we can ask for, is that it can withstand that. Anything beyond that, we got bigger problems to deal with anyway. We found this patio furniture set at Sam's Club. It was the last one in the store, so it was $1,000 off. I'm trying to strike some sort of balance between quality and affordability, because the reality is outdoor furniture doesn't really last a long time. So back here, we are still working on getting this organized. So we just put this pergola up, I think 3 days ago, and we have a lot of stuff to figure out. But this has been the home of 2 of my 4 green stalks. 2 of them actually don't have anything in. I'll be using them in the greenhouse over the winter. But I have flowers in here, and then over here, we're thinking about building some sort of outdoor kitchen to house our charcoal grill and our Blackstone. I have been loving my Blackstone, by the way. I have just a short review of making food on the Blackstone for the first time. I'll leave that in the description box below. But I'm telling you, the Blackstone is bulk meal prep game changer. But over here, we also have our garlic. So our garlic was farther back on the patio. We need to move it off of the patio eventually. I already harvested our elephant garlic, but I have some other garlic that I'm waiting to harvest that needs to be moved. So I probably won't even worry about moving this planter until we harvest that garlic, and then we can just take the planter and put it down with the rest of the garden. The lemon tree also needs to be moved because it's not getting enough sunlight, but that thing is really heavy and it just rained, so I'm waiting for it to dry out a little bit before we move it. So this is all still a pretty big work in progress, but it is coming along. So the idea then is to have a little flowery outdoor cooking kitchen area, and then over here a lounge area. And now let's go out back to our new garden. And here is our vegetable garden. So we've had a lot of learning lessons and a number of mistakes made in our garden this year. So we have new raised beds that my husband built. These beds are made out of course, untreated wood, but he used a process called Sosugiban. I think sometimes people call it sugaring, where he burned the wood to help preserve it, so it hopefully should last longer this way. That might be the biggest zucchini I've ever seen in my life. So we are having a lot of success with our zucchini lately. I've talked about that a lot on YouTube, but one issue that I've run into is I did not space my garden correctly, because I've never had zucchini plants get this big before, so I was not ready for that or anticipating it at all. So the zucchini has kind of crowded out some of my tomatoes, which are on the back side, and it's also shaded some of my other plants. Lesson learned. So next time I'll just do it a little bit differently. For tomatoes, we are trying something new this year, the Florida weave, which is where you put posts in and then you wrap some string around to help support your tomatoes. So you can kind of see it in there. I don't know how I feel about it yet. What I like about the Florida weave so far is that I don't have to buy tomato cages, and then I don't have to store tomato cages when I'm not using them. But I feel like it's squishing my tomato plants a little bit. We'll see if it matters or not. Honestly, I'm not really sure. The same thing happened with the tomatoes as my squash. I was not anticipating these tomato plants getting this big. I've grown a lot of tomatoes in my life, and these might be of the bigger varieties. This is my first year growing tomatoes from seed. So I just didn't really know what to expect, and it turns out some of these are getting really big. In fact, we really need to support some of these with more weave. Here for my herbs, the basil's doing great. I've already freeze dried some of that to preserve it, but we are using fresh basil pretty regularly. And I am letting my dill and cilantro go to seed. So my experiment with cilantro is to let this go to seed and hopefully get some volunteers, and my idea is that they will grow when they'll actually be able to survive. One problem I have with cilantro is constantly it gets hot faster than what cilantro can tolerate. It's my fault. I just don't start it soon enough, so I'm gonna see if nature can just do the work for me. I just stuck in a little bit of kale. I had these in my green stalks. I don't know why they weren't doing well in my green stalks but once I put them in my raised beds, they've really been taking off, so they are doing great. And then next to that, I have some more herbs, some chives, a little bit of amaranth that I'm using for flower arrangements, also hopefully to attract bugs that might want to eat other things. I know amaranth sometimes is just used as a sacrificial lamb, so to speak, so the bugs will eat it and not your other plants. And then some cosmos. Over here back in the zucchini bed, I have some zinnias. I started these from seed. They are from Floret. And then scattered throughout most of the garden, I have onions. We'll see how that goes. A lot of these plants are way bigger than I anticipated, so I don't even know if those poor onions can get enough sunlight. Our butternut squash is a little bit of a failure to launch, but we'll let it do its thing and see how it goes. And then I'm experimenting 2 ways with cucumbers. One, I'm going to try to let them trail like over here. And then on this side, we are trellising the cucumbers. That's a giant cucumber. Honestly, I don't really like cucumbers, but my husband and child do, so I'm growing them for them. So we'll come out and pick that cucumber soon because that is looking ready to go. And we have some smaller ones here. Honestly, I feel like my garden is a little bit behind. I don't know why. So all my peppers they're growing, but kind of slowly. I just had this Facebook memory pop up the other day, and on that day 3 years ago, I had a full countertop full of peppers, and this year it is a little bit slow, but you know, slow and steady wins the race. We'll see how it goes. I am experimenting with some cowpeas. They grow really well here in these parts. I also planted black beans, but they never germinated, so I just gave up on that. And then experimental corn. I don't think this is going to work. I think you need a lot more corn than 3 or 4 stalks to actually have good edible corn. But we had this little back corner and we thought it might be fun to try. But I will say this back corner is one of my favorites. I just love the way it looks with the amaranth and the zinnias, the squash growing in the background and the leafy corn. So even though I'm not sure this will actually be the most fruitful part of my garden, it looks really nice. In the same bed, I also have a delicata squash. We need to build more trellising for it because it is growing. The butternut squash is not doing great, but the delicata is looking good. So we have one growing and there are many more squash flowers on this, so hopefully we will have plenty of delicata to eat. It's my first year growing delicata. In the back of our beds, we have this space where I am experimenting with letting many of these trailing plants just do their thing. So I have some cucumbers, watermelons, pumpkins, and they're all just growing here. We put down some of this weed barrier to stop the grass from growing. I have mixed feelings about that, but so far it's at least keeping the grass out so we don't have to worry about mowing over the things that are trailing. But some of these things are really flowering here. That's looking really good. We also have some pretty happy looking watermelons back here. Some of the watermelons might grow down on this weed barrier, but the ones that I just put them right back into the bed to see how they do. I don't know. Again, a lot of this is experimental because our garden is now 3 times the size of what we had before. So I don't really know what will work, what won't. I made a lot of mistakes with the spacing, as you can see, but you live, you learn. And then also back here, I have a few grow bags of sweet potatoes. So I grew sweet potatoes last year in grow bags and they did great. We actually still have a few sweet potatoes left from last year to eat. So this was a really great method for us. And I think I might add in a couple more bags of sweet potatoes just because I like to grow things that last a long time or that I know we will truly eat. Over here next to the greenhouse is where I am nursing back to health some of my favorite flowers. So I had almost all of these flowers next to our original patio, but when we had to have the concrete poured, I had to take them all up. So we moved them down here and I'm just trying to take good care of them. Most of these are perennials, not the zinnias, but most of these are perennials that will come back again next year. So I really want to nurse them back to health so I can keep enjoying them. And then on the other side of the greenhouse, we just dug in a new flower bed. We haven't even finished it yet, but these flowers, which are mostly annuals, except for this red hot poker back here, are going to go in here, and these will be cut flowers for us to enjoy this summer. Next year, I'm hoping to have maybe some softer colors and a few more perennials in here. But for this year, I'm just going to go ahead and put some annuals in here and we can enjoy them. So that is a little tour of our garden and what is going on. I have made a number of mistakes as we have revamped what's going on back here. So I have a lot of things to learn and a lot of things to do differently in upcoming growing seasons. But I think given the circumstances of having a brand new garden, growing new things, having a whole new mindset with gardening, because this is really the first time I'm taking my garden seriously as a true source of food and nutrition for my family. I think considering all the newness that's wrapped around this, things are going really well. We are getting food out of there. Things are growing. It's imperfect, but that's also just life. So in the fall and the winter, the greenhouse will be a little more useful for us. I mean, I'm sure there are things that can grow in there now, but really the point for us of the greenhouse is to be able to grow food over the winter and to sustain how long we have our growing season here in southeastern North Carolina. Honestly, it's a pretty long growing season here, but after the new year, things do get a little cold, so we might be able to grow more food in the greenhouse. And then as for the pergola, all that's left to do is to decorate this thing. I just ordered some string lights, and I'm sure I'll probably stop at Home Goods soon and find some stuff to put out here just to make it a little bit cozier and a little more homey. But we are on our way, I think, to living our best lives in our backyard and on what I like to call our suburban homestead. So one of the things I often really don't like about looking on YouTube for ideas is that the content is often so out of reach and so unattainable for my lifestyle and my budget. When I was looking at patio ideas, there were these like multi-million-dollar porches and homes. And when I look up garden ideas, there are these huge homesteads, none of which is a problem. It's just not my life and it's not my budget. So I hope that this was a relatable way for us to connect, hopefully for you to get some ideas and to see what is going on around our neck of the woods. Thanks so much for stopping by today, and I hope to see you again soon.